Stop, don't scroll. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what you were taught about success isn't just incomplete. It's strategically misleading. So let me ask you something. If hard work and honesty were enough, why do the same people keep rising quietly, consistently, while everyone else stays stuck repeating effort without leverage? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will either irritate you or wake you up. From a young age, you were given a script: be patient, be good, play fair, and eventually things will work out. Clean, reassuring, completely disconnected from how power actually operates in the real world. Look around. The individuals shaping outcomes, influencing rooms, controlling narratives, they're not relying on that script. They're operating on a different layer entirely, one that isn't taught, only observed. Centuries ago, in a far more brutal version of this same game, a sharp observer noticed something most people refuse to see: not ideals patterns, not morality mechanics, and those patterns, they haven't changed, not really. What I'm about to share with you isn't theory, it's recognition. The same recurring behaviors you'll find at the top of business, politics, social circles, anywhere influence exists. And here's the catch: once you see it, you don't go back. You'll start noticing it mid-conversation, in subtle silences, in who speaks, and who doesn't, in who moves first, and who waits. Power stops being invisible. But before we go further, be honest with yourself. Do you actually want to understand this? Because there's a cost. Comfort disappears, the illusion of fairness fades, and suddenly, you're responsible for what you see. Still here? Good? Then let's begin with something that sounds completely backwards, yet quietly controls more interactions than you realize. The first lesson: absence used correctly is power. Number one, they won't tell you this directly, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The fastest way to lose power isn't failure, it's availability. It's being too present, too predictable, too easy to access, until one day you realize you're no longer being chosen, you're being used, quietly, efficiently, without resistance. Number one, master the art of strategic absence, and understand this before anything else. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding the invisible mechanics that have been playing you your entire life. Disappear. Not randomly, not emotionally, but precisely, intentionally, right when they expect you most, right when your presence feels guaranteed. That's the moment you pull back, and what happens next will tell you everything you need to know about your position. Think about it. There was a time you waited for someone, maybe a message that didn't come, maybe a call that kept getting delayed, and slowly, without realizing, your mind started orbiting them. You checked your phone again, you created scenarios, you filled the silence with meaning, and in that moment, without a single word being exchanged, control shifted. Not because they did something, but because they didn't. Now flip it. Look at your own patterns, how quickly you respond, how often you make yourself available, how easily people can predict you, and be honest. How many times have you felt that subtle drop in respect, that invisible downgrade, where people stop valuing your time because you taught them it has no cost? You became accessible, and accessible becomes ordinary, and ordinary gets ignored. There's a reason the man who is always present is rarely desired, and it has nothing to do with his intentions. It has everything to do with perception, with tension, with the psychological weight of uncertainty, because what people can't fully grasp, they chase, and what they chase, they value. This is where most men sabotage themselves. They confuse consistency with overexposure. They think showing up all the time proves strength, when in reality, it often signals the opposite. It signals that their world revolves around whoever is in front of them, that they have no scarcity, no boundaries, no controlled distance, and without distance, there is no intrigue. Without intrigue, there is no leverage. Strategic absence isn't disappearing out of insecurity. It's withdrawing with purpose. It's creating space where your presence used to be, and letting that space do the work for you. Because in that silence, people reveal themselves. They either lean in, or they drift away, and both outcomes are information. Both outcomes give you clarity, without you needing to ask a single question. Picture this. Two men enter the same room. One is loud, always around, always talking, always trying to be seen. The other arrives, says little, leaves early, and doesn't explain himself, and somehow, without effort, the second man becomes the one people remember, the one they talk about, the one they try to figure out, not because he demanded attention, but because he didn't give it freely. This isn't manipulation, it's structure. It's understanding that value is tied to access, and access, when unlimited, becomes invisible, just like air, always there, never noticed, until it's gone. So you don't disappear to punish, you don't withdraw to provoke, you step back, because your time has weight, because your presence is not something that should feel automatic, and when you do show up, you show up fully, sharp, intentional, without hesitation. But you choose when, you choose where, and most importantly, you choose who. And once you start moving like this, watch carefully, because the shift is subtle, but undeniable. People stop assuming. They start adjusting. They begin to measure their words, their timing, their approach, because now, access to you is no longer guaranteed, it's earned. Number 2. Most men think their life is built on what they do. It's not, it's built on what people believe about what they do. And that difference, subtle, almost invisible, is where power either forms or collapses. Number 2. Your reputation is your empire. And if that sounds exaggerated, it's because you haven't watched a man lose everything overnight without a single fact being proven. Just a story, just a whisper, just enough doubt planted in the right ears at the right time. One sentence, that's all it takes. One sentence repeated with confidence travels faster than a lifetime of quiet discipline. And by the time you try to correct it, it's already too late, because people don't remember explanations, they remember impressions. You've seen this before, maybe closer than you think. The guy at work who was solid, consistent, delivered every time, until one rumor started, something vague, something unconfirmed, and suddenly the room shifted. Conversations got shorter, opportunities stopped coming, no one confronted him directly, but everyone adjusted around him. That's how it happens, not with confrontation, but with silent withdrawal. Your reputation isn't what you post. It's what gets said when you're not there. It walks into rooms before you. It sits in conversations you'll never hear, shaping outcomes you'll never trace back to a single moment. And the uncomfortable truth, you don't fully control it unless you decide to. Because right now, whether you're aware of it or not, you're already being defined. Every delay, every excuse, every moment you fold under pressure, every time you overpromise and underdeliver. That's not just an action, that's a line being written into your identity, and people are reading it, memorizing it, repeating it. There's a man everyone trusts, not because he says the right things, but because he has a pattern. He shows up, he handles pressure without noise, he doesn't leak information, he doesn't chase validation. And then there's the other one, talks big, disappears when it matters, reacts emotionally, seeks approval, and wonders why doors close without explanation. Both are building reputations. Both are writing their own fate in real time. Now here's where it turns dark. At some point, someone will test what you've built, not openly, but subtly. A comment, a distortion, a quiet attempt to reframe who you are in the eyes of others, sometimes out of jealousy, sometimes out of competition, sometimes just to see if you're strong enough to defend your ground. And this is where most men fail. They go passive. They hope truth will defend itself. They take the so-called high road and stay silent. That's a mistake. Truth doesn't win by default. The strongest narrative wins. The most repeated version wins. The one that sticks emotionally wins. And if you don't control that, someone else will do it for you, and they won't be generous. This doesn't mean you become paranoid, watching every move like a prisoner of perception. It means you become precise, intentional, aware that every action carries weight, that consistency is what builds credibility, and credibility is what shields you when pressure comes. When an attack happens, you don't react emotionally, you don't explode, you don't beg to be understood. You respond clean, direct, controlled. You correct the narrative early, before it spreads, before it mutates, before it becomes something you can't contain, and then you go back to reinforcing your pattern, because one response isn't enough. Reputation is defended over time, not in a single moment. History is filled with men who lost everything not because they were weak, but because they lost control of how they were perceived, and perception, whether you like it or not, dictates reality in most rooms that matter. So understand this clearly. Your reputation is not a side effect of your life, it is your life. It is your leverage, your shield, your weapon, and if you neglect it, if you assume it will take care of itself, you're already vulnerable, already exposed, already one story away from watching everything you built start to erode, silently, efficiently, without warning. Number 3. There's a quiet moment where you lose, not when you fail, not when you get rejected, but when people start predicting you, when they can sit across from you and already know how you'll react, what you'll say, how far they can push, and more importantly, where you'll stop. That's the moment you stop being a threat and start becoming a tool. Number 3. Predictability is death, and most men walk into it willingly, calling it being real, calling it, this is just who I am, not realizing they're handing out a blueprint of their own behavior, a manual anyone can read, study, and use against them. You've seen it, the guy who always reacts the same way, always gets triggered by the same things, always chases when ignored, always folds under pressure, and at first it looks like personality, until you notice something darker, people start pressing those buttons on purpose. Think about your own life for a second. There was someone who figured you out, maybe not completely, but enough to know what gets a reaction out of you, enough to know when you'll answer, when you'll chase, when you'll explain yourself, and once they knew that, the dynamic changed, didn't it? Suddenly you weren't interacting, you were being managed, subtly, invisibly, like a system running predictable code. That's what most men don't understand. Control doesn't come from force, it comes from certainty. The moment someone is certain about you, they don't need to overpower you, they just need to position you, trigger you, wait for you to follow the script you've been repeating your whole life. This is why rigid men lose, not because they lack strength, but because their strength is linear, obvious, easy to map. They become one-dimensional, one style, one tone, one predictable pattern of behavior, and they wear it like a badge of honor. I'm consistent. No, you're readable, and readable men get outplayed. The real shift happens when you stop being locked into one version of yourself, when you understand that power lives in contrast, in the ability to shift, to adapt, to become something different depending on the moment, not fake, not unstable, but controlled, intentional variation. One moment you're calm, observing, almost detached. The next, decisive, direct, unmovable. And then, when least expected, you withdraw completely, leaving space where your reaction was anticipated. Picture this, a man in a negotiation, calm, listening, giving nothing away. The other side grows comfortable, thinks they've read him, thinks they know his limits, and then suddenly, he changes pace, tightens the frame, cuts the conversation short, walks away without hesitation. Now the entire dynamic flips, because certainty just turned into doubt, and doubt is where leverage is born. Unpredictability isn't chaos, it's discipline at a higher level. It's having multiple responses available and choosing deliberately which one to show, or whether to show anything at all. Because sometimes the most powerful move is no move, no reaction, no confirmation of what they expected from you. When someone knows that pushing you will always get the same outcome, they own that part of you. They can activate it whenever they want. But when your responses vary, when sometimes you engage, sometimes you ignore, sometimes you redirect, now they hesitate, now they question, now they slow down around you because they can't map you anymore. And that hesitation, that moment where they're unsure, that's where your control lives. The men who move at the highest level aren't loud. They aren't erratic. They're composed, but there's something about them that can't be fully read. Something that keeps people slightly off balance, slightly cautious, slightly aware that one wrong move might shift the entire interaction. So understand this clearly. The moment you become predictable, you become manageable. And the moment you become manageable, you're already losing. Even if it doesn't look like it yet, even if it feels comfortable, even if it feels stable. Because comfort is exactly what makes you easy to control, easy to anticipate, easy to replace. Number 4. What destroys most men isn't lack of strength. It's mistimed strength. Power used at the wrong moment, like firing a weapon before the target even appears, or hesitating until the window closes and pretending it wasn't meant to be. That lie, that quiet excuse, has buried more potential than failure ever could. Number 4, timing beats strength. And this is where the game stops being about effort and starts being about control, because you can have discipline, intelligence, even dominance, and still lose to someone less capable who simply moved at the right moment while you moved at the wrong one. You've felt this before, that tension between acting now or waiting, that pressure building in your chest, that voice saying, "Do something." And most men obey it, not because it's right, but because they can't handle the discomfort of holding still. There's a man who texts too early, reveals interest too fast, shows his hand before there's any uncertainty, and in doing so, kills the tension that could have worked in his favor. And there's another who waits, not out of fear, but out of awareness, watching, letting the dynamic unfold, understanding that timing isn't passive, it's calculated restraint. Same desire, completely different outcomes. Think about negotiations, business, even social dynamics. The one who speaks first often gives away position. The one who reacts emotionally exposes his leverage. The one who rushes reveals he needs the outcome more than the other side. And that need, that urgency, becomes a weakness that gets exploited without mercy. Meanwhile, the man who can sit in silence, who can delay his move while the pressure rises, starts bending the situation without saying a word. This is where most men break, not in action, but in waiting. Because waiting feels like losing control. It feels like you're falling behind, like you're missing something, and so they act early. They force conversations, force decisions, force outcomes, and all they really do is show that they're not in control of themselves. And if you can't control yourself, someone else will. But here's the other side, the part no one talks about. Waiting too long is just as deadly. You've seen it, maybe lived it. The opportunity that was there, clear, open, almost inviting, and you hesitated, you overanalyzed, you told yourself you needed more certainty, more clarity, more confidence, and then it was gone, taken by someone who wasn't better, just faster. That kind of loss stays with you, not loudly, but quietly, replaying in your mind at random moments, reminding you exactly where you froze. Timing is a brutal teacher because it punishes both extremes. Act too early and you expose yourself. Act too late and you erase yourself. The power is in between, in that narrow window where the move feels almost uncomfortable, not rushed, not delayed, precise. The men who operate at a higher level develop something rare. They can hold tension without collapsing into action. They can sit in uncertainty without needing to resolve it immediately, and then, when the moment aligns, when the energy shifts, when the opening appears, they move fast, decisively, without hesitation, and it looks effortless to everyone watching, but it's not, it's controlled timing. Picture a room where everyone is talking, competing, trying to assert themselves, and one man says nothing, just observes, reads the dynamics, waits, and then, at the exact moment the conversation weakens, he steps in, says less, but says it with weight, and suddenly the room adjusts around him. Same words, different timing, completely different impact. So understand this, the world doesn't reward effort, it rewards alignment. And alignment is timing, the right move, at the right moment, with the right force. Remove any one of those, and you get nothing, or worse, you get consequences. And once you start seeing it, really seeing it, you realize most of your past losses weren't because you weren't good enough, they happened because you moved at the wrong time. And in this game, timing isn't a detail, it's everything. Number 5. Most ceilings aren't built above you. They're built around you, quietly, through the people you tolerate, the conversations you repeat, the standards you accept without questioning, until one day you look up and realize you didn't hit a limit, you lived inside one. Number 5. Your circle is your ceiling, and this is the part most men resist, because it forces a confrontation they've been avoiding. It forces you to look at the people closest to you and ask a dangerous question. Are they expanding me, or are they quietly keeping me exactly where I am? Not through malice, not through sabotage, but through familiarity, through shared comfort, through a silent agreement to not outgrow each other. You think you're independent. You think your mindset is yours, your ambition is yours, your standards are yours. but spend enough time around a certain frequency, and you start matching it without noticing. The man who once had edge becomes softer. The one who had discipline becomes flexible. The one who had vision starts settling. Not because he chose to, but because it became normal, though. You've seen this play out. A guy with potential, sharp, focused, hungry. Then slowly he drifts, not dramatically. Just small shifts, different conversations, different priorities, more excuses, less action. And if you trace it back, it's never one big decision. It's proximity. It's who he started spending time with, what they normalized, what they tolerated, what they laughed off instead of correcting. And the opposite is just as real. Put a man in a room where standards are higher than his, where excuses are rejected, where performance is expected, where silence carries weight and results speak louder than intentions. And watch how quickly he adjusts, how quickly he elevates, not because someone forced him, but because the environment demanded it. That's the part most people don't want to accept. Influence is constant. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't announce itself. It just rewires you over time, through repetition, through exposure, through subtle pressure to belong. And belonging, that's where most men trade their edge, because it feels good, it feels safe, it feels like loyalty. But loyalty can trap you, especially when it's tied to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. There are people in your life who know you as who you used to be, and without saying it, they expect you to stay there because your growth creates distance, and that distance makes them uncomfortable. So they pull you back, with jokes, with doubt, with subtle resistance, not because they hate you, but because your evolution disrupts their stability. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because now the decision isn't external, it's internal. Do you stay loyal to your past, to the version of you that built those relationships? Or do you start aligning with the version you're becoming, even if it means creating space, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means walking alone for a while? The men who move forward understand something most avoid. Proximity is programming, and programming shapes outcomes. They don't keep everyone close just because of history. They don't maintain access just because it's easy. They evaluate, adjust, create distance when needed, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. This doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means being precise, intentional, aware of who influences your thinking, your standards, your behavior, because every hour you spend around mediocrity trains you to accept it. Every conversation rooted in complaint conditions you to think small. Every environment that tolerates less slowly lowers your own expectations. And the reality is simple. Even if it's uncomfortable, you will rise or fall to the level of your environment, not your intentions, not your plans, not your potential, your environment. So look closely, because your future isn't just in your hands, it's in the people you keep within reach. And if you're honest enough to see it, you'll also be forced to decide what to do about it. Number 6. Power, at its highest level, doesn't look like power. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't push. It doesn't need to prove anything. And that's exactly why most men miss it. Because they've been trained to associate control with force, with dominance that can be seen, heard, resisted, when in reality, the most effective control is the one that feels like freedom. Number 6. Control through illusion. And before you reject that word, understand what's really happening. Because this isn't about cheap manipulation. It's about structure. It's about shaping the environment so precisely that outcomes become inevitable, while everyone involved feels like they arrived there on their own. That's the difference between forcing a result and engineering one. You've experienced this more times than you realize. Someone presents you with two options, both reasonable, both acceptable, and you choose one, feeling decisive, feeling in control. But what you didn't see is that both paths led to the same place, both served the same objective, and your choice was simply the final step in a process that was designed long before you entered the conversation. Look at how most men operate. They push, they insist, they try to convince, they argue, they over-explain, and all they create is resistance, because the moment someone feels pressured, their instinct is to pull back, to protect their autonomy, to resist even if the idea makes sense. Force creates friction, and friction slows everything down. Now compare that to a different approach. A man who doesn't demand, doesn't chase agreement, doesn't need validation. He simply frames the situation, presents options, sets boundaries so cleanly that the path forward becomes obvious, almost effortless. We can do it this way, or this way, and both routes serve him. Both align with what he wants, but the other person walks away thinking it was their decision. That's where the shift happens, not in what is said, but in how it's structured. Because people don't want chaos. They don't want infinite freedom. They want direction that doesn't feel like control. They want to feel like they're choosing, even when the field has already been defined for them. Think about a simple scenario. A man trying to lead in a relationship. One version of him says, "We're doing this." Direct, rigid, immediately triggering resistance. The other says, "We could go here or here. Both are solid. What do you feel like?" Same destination in his mind, completely different response from her, because one removes autonomy, the other preserves the illusion of it. And that illusion, that's where influence lives, not in deception, but in design. Because when someone believes the decision is theirs, they defend it, they commit to it, they follow through without needing to be pushed, and suddenly you're not controlling them. They're aligning with you. The mistake most men make is trying to dominate outcomes through visible control, through pressure, through insistence, and all that does is expose their need for the result. Need kills leverage. The more you need something, the less control you actually have over it. But when you step back, when you stop forcing, when you start thinking in terms of structure instead of reaction, everything changes. You begin to see interactions as systems, not moments, as sequences, not isolated decisions. And once you can shape the sequence, the outcome stops being random. The men who understand this don't argue more. They argue less. They don't convince harder. They design better. They don't chase compliance. They create conditions where compliance feels natural. And once you start moving like this, you realize something most never grasp. You don't need to control people directly to get what you want. You just need to control the frame they're operating in, because whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. Number 7. Most men build walls and call it strength. They harden, they shut down. They hide everything that could be used against them, and for a while it works. They feel in control, unreadable, untouchable, until something breaks, not outside, but inside, because isolation isn't power, it's just protection taken too far. Number 7. Strategic vulnerability is strength, and this is where the game flips completely. Because if all you've learned so far is control, distance, precision, this is what keeps you from becoming rigid, from becoming predictable in a different way, from turning into a man who can't connect, can't influence deeply, can't create loyalty beyond surface-level respect. There's a version of you that never shows weakness, never opens up, never reveals anything real, and at first, people admire it. They see discipline, composure, control. But over time, something shifts. They stop trying to get close. They stop investing, because there's nothing to connect to, nothing to trust, nothing to hold on to. You become respected, but distant, present, but not felt. Now look at the opposite. The man who shares everything, too fast, too much, turning every conversation into exposure, confusing honesty with emotional release, thinking that being open automatically creates connection. But what it really creates is imbalance, because people don't respect what is given without filter, without timing, without control. Both extremes fail. One isolates, the other weakens. The real power sits in between, in choosing what to reveal, when to reveal it, and most importantly, why. Because when vulnerability is intentional, when it's placed at the right moment, with the right person, it does something most men have never experienced. It shifts the entire dynamic in seconds. Picture this. You've been composed, controlled, measured for weeks, maybe months. People can't quite read you. They respect you, but they don't fully understand you. And then, in a moment that feels almost unexpected, you reveal something real, something that carries weight, not dramatic, not desperate, just honest, something that costs you to say. Watch what happens next. Their posture changes, their tone softens, their guard drops without them realizing it, because for the first time, they feel like they've accessed something exclusive, something not everyone gets to see. And in that moment, trust forms, not because you gave everything, but because you gave just enough. That's the difference. The weak reveal to be accepted. The strong reveal to create alignment. And once that alignment exists, influence deepens, because people don't just respect you anymore, they feel connected to you. And connection is what creates loyalty, what makes people stay, what makes them invest without being asked. But this only works if it's rare, if every interaction with you is open, exposed, emotional. It loses weight. It becomes noise, predictable, expected, easy to dismiss. Rarity creates impact, just like everything else. The men who understand this don't live in one state. They shift. They can be closed, unreadable, controlled, and then, when it serves the moment, they open just enough to change everything. That contrast, that unpredictability in emotional access, keeps people engaged, attentive, aware that there's more beneath the surface. And that's where most men get it wrong. They think authenticity means full exposure. But real authenticity is controlled revelation. It's knowing that not everyone deserves access to every layer of you, and not every moment. It's the right moment to show it. So you don't hide everything, but you don't give everything either. You choose, you measure, you reveal with purpose. Because when vulnerability is constant, it weakens you, but when it's precise, it becomes one of the most powerful tools you have, not to seek validation, not to be understood, but to shape how people connect to you. Once you control that connection, you control far more than you think. Number 8. Most conversations fail before they even begin. Not because your idea is weak, not because your logic is flawed, but because you're speaking a language the other person has no reason to understand, and then you sit there wondering why nothing lands, why they nod, agree, and still do nothing. Number 8. Speak their language, not yours. And this is where influence becomes surgical, because the mistake most men make is assuming that truth is enough, that if something makes sense, it should work, that if the argument is solid, people should follow. But people don't move based on what's true. They move based on what they feel is relevant to them. You've been there, explaining something clearly, step by step, making perfect sense, laying out the logic, and the other person just looks at you, half engaged, distracted, giving you surface-level agreement with zero real commitment, and you walk away thinking they understood, when in reality, they just didn't care enough to act. Because while you were talking about your reasoning, they were filtering everything through one silent question. What does this do for me? And when that question isn't answered, nothing happens. Look at how this plays out in real life. A man tries to lead, to influence, to direct outcomes, but he frames everything around his perspective, his goals, his logic. This is better. This makes more sense. This is the right move, and all of it may be true, but none of it is compelling, because it's disconnected from the other person's internal drivers, their desires, their fears, their priorities. Now flip it, same situation, different approach. Instead of explaining, he observes, he listens, he identifies what actually matters to the other person, what they're trying to gain, what they're trying to avoid, and then he speaks directly into that, not changing the outcome, but changing the framing. Suddenly, the same idea feels different, not because it changed, but because it now aligns with something personal, something immediate, something they already care about. And when that alignment clicks, resistance disappears. This is where most men get uncomfortable because they think this is manipulation. But it's not. It's translation. It's understanding that every person operates inside their own reality, their own priorities, their own emotional triggers, and if you ignore that, you're speaking into a void. Think about the last time you actually got someone to move, to agree, to follow through. It didn't happen because you insisted harder. It happened because, consciously or not, you connected your objective to their interest. You made it make sense for them. And think about the times you failed. You probably kept explaining, kept justifying, kept pushing your perspective, thinking more clarity would solve it, when the real issue was misalignment, not misunderstanding. The men who understand this don't waste time trying to win arguments. They position outcomes. They frame ideas in a way that makes agreement feel natural, almost obvious. They don't try to make people care about what they care about. They show how it already connects. Because every decision runs through self-interest, not in a selfish way, but in a personal way. People need to see themselves in the outcome. They need to feel that it serves them. protects them, advances them. And once you start operating like this, everything shifts, conversations become smoother, resistance becomes rare, people start moving with you instead of against you, not because you forced them, but because, from their perspective, they're choosing what's best for themselves. That's the real shift. You stop pushing your reality onto others and start stepping into theirs, just long enough to guide it where you want it to go. And when you can do that consistently, influence stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like control. Number 9. The men who run the game aren't the loudest in the room, they're the quiet ones collecting it, piece by piece, detail by detail, building a map while everyone else is busy performing. And by the time you realize what's happening, they already know more about the situation than you do, maybe more about you than you're comfortable admitting. Number 9. Information is the ultimate currency, and most men completely misunderstand this. They chase visible assets, money, status, recognition, thinking that's where power comes from. But those are outcomes, not sources. The real source is knowing what others don't, knowing it earlier, knowing how to use it before anyone else even realizes it matters. Think about how you move right now. How often you speak just to fill space. How often you reveal your thoughts, your plans, your intentions without being asked. How quickly you respond, explain, justify. And in doing that, you're leaking information constantly, giving away pieces of yourself while collecting almost nothing in return. Now picture a different man. Same room, same conversation, but he's not trying to impress, not trying to dominate, not trying to prove anything. He's listening, watching, picking up on tone, hesitation, contradictions, small details that most people ignore. Someone mentions a name, he remembers it. Someone slips a frustration, he notes it. Someone reveals a preference without realizing it, he stores it. Weeks later, that same information becomes leverage. He knows who to approach, how to frame it, when to move, while everyone else is still guessing. That's the difference. Not intelligence, not luck, awareness. You've seen flashes of this before. Someone who always seems one step ahead, always positioned correctly, always prepared for things that came out of nowhere for everyone else. They didn't come out of nowhere, you just weren't paying attention. This is where most men fail. They treat conversations as expression, not as data. They talk to be heard, not to learn. They focus on what they want to say instead of what's being revealed right in front of them. And because of that, they stay blind to patterns, blind to intentions, blind to opportunities that are obvious once you know where to look. But there's another layer, because collecting information is only half the equation. Protecting your own is the other half. And this is where discipline separates you from everyone else. You don't reveal everything, you don't explain your next move, you don't make yourself fully transparent just to feel understood. Because the more predictable your information becomes, the easier it is to counter you. Watch how quickly people open up when they feel safe, when they feel heard, when they feel like you're not judging, not reacting, not exposing them. That's not accidental. That's a position you create. You become a place where information flows, where people talk more than they planned, reveal more than they intended, and you simply collect. Not to manipulate, but to understand, to anticipate, to position yourself before the situation even unfolds. Because once you start seeing patterns, once you start connecting details, once you start understanding motivations beneath words, you stop reacting to reality and start moving ahead of it. And that's where the shift happens. You're no longer guessing, no longer hoping things go your way, no longer surprised by outcomes, because you already saw the direction long before it became obvious. Most men want control without awareness, they want outcomes without understanding. But the truth is simple, even if it's uncomfortable, the one who knows more, moves first, moves better, and wins without needing to fight for it. Number 10. What ruins most men isn't failure. It's what they leave unfinished. The quiet mess behind them, the conversations they avoided, the doors they thought were closed but never really were, the loose ends they told themselves they'd handle later. And later is where everything comes back with interest. Number 10. Finish what you start, and understand this at a level most never do, because this isn't about discipline in the motivational sense. This is about survival in a game where incomplete actions don't disappear. They wait. They sit in the background, building pressure, turning into problems that hit you when your guard is down, when you've already moved on, when you're least prepared to deal with them. You've lived this. A situation you thought was handled, a person you thought was out of your life, a conflict you assumed had cooled off, and then one day it resurfaces, not the same, but stronger, more complicated, more expensive to fix than it ever was in the beginning, and you sit there thinking this again, not realizing it never really left. That's the cost of half measures. They feel easier in the moment, less confrontation, less discomfort, less intensity, but they create long-term instability. You delay clarity because it's uncomfortable. You soften decisions because you don't want friction. You leave things open because closing them feels too final. And in doing that, you create space for uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds problems. Look at how most men operate. They end things vaguely. We'll see. Let's keep in touch. We'll figure it out later. They avoid defining outcomes because definition forces responsibility, forces consequence, forces finality. And then they wonder why people come back, why situations drag on, why nothing feels fully resolved. Now compare that to a man who moves differently. When he closes something, it's closed, clean, clear, no room for reinterpretation, no mixed signals, no ambiguity left behind. It might feel sharper in the moment, more direct, sometimes even uncomfortable, but it creates something rare, stability. Because clarity, even when it's harsh, removes confusion. And confusion is where most future problems are born. Think about business, relationships, even small daily decisions. Every time you leave something incomplete, you're creating a future obligation, a future risk, a future point of failure. And those stack up, quietly, until one day they hit all at once, and now you're dealing with consequences from decisions you thought were behind you. This is why the men who operate at a higher level are almost obsessive about closure. They confirm, they document, they clarify, they double-check, not because they're paranoid, but because they understand that what's left unresolved doesn't disappear. It compounds. There's also something deeper here. Finishing what you start builds a different kind of identity, not visible, not loud, but solid. People know where they stand with you. They know your decisions mean something. They know your actions have finality. That alone changes how they interact with you. Because the opposite is just as real. When you're known for leaving things open, for being inconsistent, for not following through completely, people start testing you, pushing boundaries, re-entering spaces you thought were closed, because they've learned something about you. You don't finish. And once that pattern is seen, it gets used against you. So this isn't about being harsh. It's about being complete. When you end something, end it fully. When you decide something, define it clearly. When you act, follow through to the point where nothing is left hanging, nothing is left open for reinterpretation. Because the truth most men learn too late is simple. The biggest problems in your life won't come from what you see coming. They'll come from what you thought was already done and wasn't. This isn't an ending. It's the moment the filter cracks. The moment you realize you've been watching the game from the outside, reacting, adjusting, surviving, while other men were actually playing it, shaping it, deciding outcomes before you even understood what was happening. You just went through 10 lessons that most people will hear and forget, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack the willingness to face what this really implies. Because once you see it, you lose excuses. You lose the comfort of blaming circumstances, timing, other people. Now it's on you. That's the part no one says out loud. And you can feel it, that tension inside, that slight discomfort, that voice questioning whether this is too much, too cold, too far from what you were taught to believe. Good. That's not rejection, that's friction. That's your old framework colliding with something more precise, more honest, more aligned with how things actually work beneath the surface. Because this was never about becoming ruthless for the sake of it. It's about becoming aware enough to stop being naive. There's a difference. The man who stays blind calls it morality. The man who sees calls it strategy. Same world, completely different outcomes. Look back at your own life for a second. The times you played fair and still lost. The times you gave more and got less. The times you trusted the process and watched someone else move ahead of you, not because they were better, but because they understood something you didn't. That wasn't bad luck. That was misalignment with reality. And now you have a choice, not the comfortable kind, the real kind. You can close this, go back to what feels familiar, keep operating on outdated rules that sound good but don't protect you. Or you can start integrating this, slowly, deliberately, watching how people respond, how dynamics shift, how outcomes change when you stop moving blindly. Because knowledge like this doesn't stay neutral. It either transforms how you operate or it fades and leaves you exactly where you were, except now with the awareness that you chose not to act. That's the difference. Before, you didn't know, now you do. This isn't about memorizing principles. It's about applying them in moments that matter, when your instinct tells you to react, but you pause, when your impulse is to chase, but you pull back, when you want to explain, but you stay silent, when you're tempted to leave something unfinished, but you close it completely. That's where this becomes real. Most men will never reach that point. They'll consume, agree, maybe even feel inspired for a moment, and then go back to default behavior, back to comfort, back to patterns that keep them exactly where they are. Not because they can't change, but because they won't. The ones who move differently, they take one concept, apply it, observe, adjust, refine, and over time, something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Their presence changes, their decisions sharpen, their interactions carry weight. And here's the part that hits harder than anything else. The world doesn't care which path you choose. It doesn't reward intention. It doesn't punish ignorance. It simply responds to how you operate. You either learn the dynamics or you get shaped by them. So now it's clear. You're not stuck. You're not blocked. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're choosing every day whether to stay inside the illusion or step into awareness and deal with the consequences of seeing things as they are. That's the real divide. Not talent, not luck, awareness. And once you cross that line, you don't go back.